My family and I went on a trip to the Hocking Hills area of southern Ohio a few weeks ago. There was a place that I've always wanted to visit, the abandoned ghost town Moonville Rail Tunnel. I've never been to this area, so I didn't know what to expect, but I did know it was pretty deep in the woods. We took a trip from our rented cabin using Google for GPS to the location. We started driving, and it's, for lack of better words, really impoverished where we are driving. Hills have eyes-esque. We literally only see a few cars on the way there and are on back roads. We get to a point where we need to enter into a forest, and we are close to the tunnel. There was a sign that said we were entering Bubba Wood. For little additional information, I drive a Mercedes that I am just lucky to have, and have my husband in the car, a black man with dreadlocks, my 10-year-old nonverbal autistic son, and my 6-year-old daughter. We drive down this really creepy stone road into the forest, and there is nothing back there. No houses, no cars, nobody. We see signs that we're close and pull in the parking lot. We walk over the footbridge and make our way towards the tunnel, which is a lot larger than I expected. We hear this sound coming from the other side of the tunnel that goes into the woods away from the parking lot. A truck comes driving through the tunnel towards us while we are on foot. He gets out of his truck with a chainsaw, and it's a white guy in his 60s. He walks with my entire family everywhere we go and through the tunnel. I tried to make small talk with him and pull some info about if he worked for the Department of Natural Resources, etc. He really wasn't budging. We turn around to walk out of the tunnel, and he starts using a chainsaw behind us, and the sound is just echoing through this tunnel. At this point, we have no cell phone service, and literally no one knows my family is out there except us. I was already worried my car was sending the wrong idea to people, like we have money or something. We don't. We rush to the car to get the kids in their booster seats, and this MF comes driving over the footbridge in his truck towards us in the parking lot. I honestly don't even know how his truck fit on it. He stops again and gets out of his truck and starts walking the other direction, much to our relief. About this time, I noticed there are dusty handprints on my car. I asked my husband if they were his, and we compared his hand and my son's, and they were not a match. I don't know who could have touched the car because we were with the chainsaw man the entire time we were there. We get out of there as fast as possible. Just a few minutes later, I look in my rearview mirror, and there is a bunch of dust kicked up behind us, and there he is. He had to have driven pretty fast on the stone road to catch up to us like that. There is nowhere to go in these woods. The road is basically one lane, and we have no cell service or GPS. Every time I think we lose him, he is there again. I am waiting for my tires to get popped or something, or for this guy to ram me off the road into a ravine in the woods. Finally, we get out of the woods, and I turn around, and he's still following. We were following printed directions to get back, and I ended up making a wrong turn in the excitement. The guy in the truck was finally gone, and I turned around to go back past the stone road that goes into the forest. There is one lone house near this road, and there is his truck parked there. He had to have seen us drive onto this road into the woods and taken some back way to the tunnel. I don't know if he was just trying to protect the site from more graffiti or what, but he really creeped us out. It was like every scary movie trope rolled into one single event. I was camping in the middle of nowhere in Washington, near Mount Rainier. Like, not an official campground, just way out in the forest where I wouldn't have expected another human for miles. One night, I wake up and hear something, open my tent, and there is a guy sitting by where my fire had been, right outside of my tent. Nothing particularly noteworthy about the guy, just a fairly regular-looking dude, just sitting there a couple feet from my tent. No bag or pack or anything with him, just a guy. He saw me open the tent. His eyes got huge, like he had just seen a ghost, and he took off. It shook me up pretty badly, but over the next day, I managed to put it out of my mind fairly well after writing it off as just some odd occurrence, and a guy that was probably high or something and had somehow managed to set up a camp, coincidentally not far from mine. Then, 2 days after that, and 10 to 15 miles away, in totally random directions that nobody could take the same path as on accident, I was sitting by the fire that night and started hearing noises that I got more and more convinced were a person. I called out to them, and out of the darkness, someone was like,
"Do you know how to get to Bell's Canyon?"
I said no, I don't even think that's a real place there. They kept talking from just out of my line of vision. I tried to see them with my flashlight, but they yelled,
"Aim that away."
And kind of spooked and not wanting to piss off a potentially crazy person, I did. After like 15 minutes of me being very freaked out, and them talking and asking completely random questions from the darkness, it sounded like the voice had gotten closer, so I shined my light that way again. And it was the same dude who had been outside my tent 2 nights before. He had to have followed me almost 15 miles over 2 days, because there's no way he could have just accidentally wound up in the same spot as vast as that wilderness is. No possible way. As soon as my light hit him, he took off again. I started to chase him, but I didn't want to get lost in the wilderness in the dark, so stopped quickly after probably only 100 to 200 feet. This one couldn't be written off, because the only way he could have been in both places is specifically if he was following me. I decided the trip was very over first thing in the morning, and hiked back out over 3 days, constantly doubling back, trying to throw anyone following off my trail, and occasionally hiding and waiting to see if he would come by following me. I really can't describe how terrifying it was to feel like I was being hunted through the woods, and to actually have to brainstorm on things I could do to best avoid, potentially, being murdered. On the first night of hiking out, twice I heard what sounded like a person walking circles outside my tent, but by the time I mustered the courage to look, nobody was there. On the second night, I heard what I thought was an animal making noises at first in the distance, but slowly decided it sounded more like a human making animal calls, but could have actually been an animal, but I didn't actually see the guy again, but it really sounded like a person making howling noises. I literally almost cried when I finally got back to my car. The relief was so strong. To this day, probably the most terrifying experience I've ever had. I have no idea who the guy was, or what his intentions were, and no way of getting an explanation, but I really can't articulate just what a terrifying few days it was. It finally started raining here, so I took my son, 14 male, out mushroom hunting over the weekend. It was later than we normally go, and sun goes down much earlier, but we were taking a quick trail to the river and back in hopes to find turkey tails or chanterelles. We took a wrong turn and ended up going through a big field, which the trail would take us back around to the main trail to the river. As we walked towards the main trail, the last group of people had left, and it was just me and my son. We walked along, and out of a thicket-side trail came this weird man. He had a dog with him that was alert at his side. He was staring at us as we walked closer towards him. Then he started waving at us, this really weird, slow wave. I was immediately uncomfortable and goosebumpy, but I didn't want to be impolite, so I half-hearted waved back while staring back and telling my son to slow up a little. I didn't want to actually meet up at the junction. After a few minutes of us dawdling, the guy slowly turned and began walking down the trail towards the main trail. I was wary walking. I didn't want to go too fast, and we stopped to look at some plants, so the guy and dog got further down this trail, which curved to the right and continued on 2 blocks to the junction. I was thinking, if this was a creepy let's not meet, this dude will be waiting around the corner. And, sure enough, he was standing at the junction off to the left and towards the parking lot, and to the right was a .6 trail to the river. Dude was just standing there with his dog, staring at us, not moving at all. Both my son and I were like, holy shit, WTF, let's keep wide to the right. And saying he looks old, we could run faster than him, and just generally planning for freaky deaky, just in case. He kept staring at us, so as we approached, I asked if he was okay, and kept staring back. He was greasy-haired, tiny round glasses, a blue windbreaker, plaid long shorts, about 50 years old. His dog was a small beagle mix. He didn't answer me at all, just kept staring. We turned to the right and walked about a block. I had my phone cam facing me, so I could watch him over my shoulder, and the only movement was him slowly shifting his direction to continue staring at us. I didn't say anything else to him. It was moderately unsettling, his stare, made more so by his lack of response, a motionless face, weird tiny glasses, and slow wave at us like a zombie. He did leave because on our way back, he was no longer standing on the main trail. So hey, freaky deaky forest zombie dude, for sure, stay in the thickets and let's not meet.